Hello and welcome to the Homesick to Happy Movers podcast. I'm Keisha Ellingson and I'm your host here. And here I will lead you through the process of healing homesickness so you can feel at home in your new area, even if you are super shy. And today we're talking with an author of the Homesick book collaboration, Alicia, and we are so excited to bring this conversation to you because there's so many different aspects of moving. And I believe that even though all of our life situations are different, there's common themes in it all. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So excited.
Awesome. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Excuse me. So my name is Alicia Williams, and I am originally from a tiny little community, Plankington, South Dakota. And my husband and I now live in Jacksonville, Florida. And we've been married for about 14 and a half years. So long time, in my opinion. And then we have a little fur baby, Rizzo. He's our little multi-poo dog. And I am a small business owner. I am an angel mom. I am a lover of all things nature. Like, get me outside, give me a trail, or the ocean is my absolute favorite. So that's me in a little nutshell.
Awesome. So what did you write your chapter about?
So my chapter is about my husband and I's first big move. So we were newlyweds, literally newlyweds, only been married a couple months. And I wrote how we made the big move to Chicago. And there was a lot of things that happened in that move that were very emotional and very, very, very hard. So I really dived in to that. We were diagnosed with unexplained infertility during that time. And I talk about that. And then we went through the IVF journey. And if you out there listening are part of that community, you know how very, very emotional that can be. And then how, unfortunately, we became angel parents during our first big move. So I talk about all that kind of stuff, and then how we got through it and we thrived. And, really, as a married couple, we're stronger than ever. So.
Yeah, it sounds like quite the journey. And you mentioned that it was your first big move.
Yes.
And I feel like that can be the hardest leap to make, that first big, huge life change. So
yes.
What led up to your move?
So I giggle because I am the type of person that if I get an idea, I will jump in 2 feet first and figure it out as we go. Okay, so my husband and I had visited his brother and partner a year earlier, and we both fell in love with Chicago. And we had, like I said, just gotten married about 2 months prior to me dropping this bomb on my husband and asking him, hey, honey, do you want to make a big move? My husband was not happy with his job, and I knew that. And I was ready for a big adventure. We had our wedding money. So in my mind, I was like, this is the perfect time. Let's do it. So that's literally kind of how it led up to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did he have any like worries when you mentioned let's move, or was he was he ready to go?
He had a lot of worries. He looked at me like deer in headlights, for lack of better words. He thought I was crazy, and I just kind of let it sit. And then within I believe it was a week, he was like, oh, honey, maybe that is a good idea. And literally, we were both on the same page. We went back to Chicago. We're just like, if this happens and this happens, if this falls in place, we're going to do it. And everything really fell into place. And so we're like, let's do it. Let's do it.
That's awesome. Awesome. So what were the parts of the moves that you struggled with?
So I am a very socially awkward introvert. I really am, and that's okay. And so for me to make friends was at first really hard. Neither of us had jobs when we first got there. So we were really struggling with finding people. um, and so once I started a job though, then it was fine. And I did find my people, but that was a really, really hard for both of us. Because we had our community and we had our friends from when we were growing up, they were always around us. So for us to go into a brand new community, being very introverted and socially awkward, it was definitely a huge struggle for us at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's common to a lot of movers is if you've grown up your entire life in one area, it's like you almost don't realize the amount of support that is around you. And it
Yes.
takes moving to a completely new area to be able to look back and say, oh my goodness, I had support all around me and I didn't even see it.
Yes. Yes, that was huge. And you don't even realize it. Like you said, you don't realize it till you're taken out of that situation or that and kind of thrown into a different one. But yeah, that was a huge struggle at first. And then obviously the second one was the diagnosis of unexplained infertility and the whole IVF. That's like a whole different ball game. But by the time we had entered into that phase of the move, we had a tribe, for lack of better words. We had a huge community surrounding us, and so thank goodness, we're very grateful for them. But that was also a huge struggle. So.
Mm-hmm. How did you go from not knowing anyone and feeling a bit awkward to developing your tribe?
We, at that time, I was an early childhood teacher, and I found a community like through work of women that aligned with my love of children and the silliness and if you're an early childhood educator, you understand what I'm talking about. And then my husband, once he did find a job, he found a really good community of people from his work. And then we kind of they introduced us to their friends and and then it just became kind of a web. And we're very, very blessed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like how you explain that, how you made friends at work, but it didn't stop there. And you're able
Yes.
to reach out to more friends, make connections through those connections.
Yes.
That's a very good picture of like a web of how your friendship circle can continue to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yes, even if you're socially awkward. So you will be just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was extremely socially awkward when I started moving. Um, I was I was much better at being a wallflower than actually starting a conversation. So it happened to where I was desiring these friendships and I was desiring connection, and I could see all the people, but I just didn't know how to make it happen.
Yes. Yep, I totally can relate to that. Yep.
So, what were areas that you overcame your struggle during the move?
um there was a lot of times where we knew, when I say we, my husband and I, we knew we would have to do uncomfortable things to grow. We knew that we would have to um talk to people at work and suggest we go out, after work. It was uncomfortable at first, but like I've talked to you before in the past, just growth in general is as a human. So like just doing tiny little uncomfortable things really helped me feel like, hey, you know what, I can do this. And if they were meant to be in my life, then it will happen. Just chill out, Alicia. Like it's okay. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, yeah, that was a huge, huge
Yeah.
part of it.
I like how you said uncomfortable leads to growth. And thinking about your story, like when you were uncomfortable, you asked those people to go out after work, and like that feels a little bit uncomfortable when you're first initiating, like, hey, let's hang out more. But in the end, it creates feeling comfortable.
Yes. Like they were the first, one of them, and I'm still connected to the majority of them now, was one of the first people I called after we lost our son. So like that tells you my comfort level with these humans. Like we were so close, and I would have never thought that first moving to a humongous city like we did. There is you can have close relationships. It's amazing, really.
And I think that offers a lot of hope to the listeners out there who feel alone in their new area and who are kind of reeling from all the craziness that happens with a move, and all of a sudden they're in a new area with no connections, that you can develop the connections that you need.
Yes, it is possible. Do not give up on yourself. And if you try and it doesn't work out at first, then they weren't meant to be. That's what I always tell myself. Then they weren't meant to be in your life, Alicia. Don't sweat it. Like don't just give up. Don't give up the first or second time if it doesn't work.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's meeting a bunch of different personalities and seeing who vibes well.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. So what encouragement did you share for the readers in your chapter?
Oh boy. First of all, just with like I talked about the socially awkward, don't give up. I talked a lot about, so when my husband and I, when we first moved there, we were newlyweds. We were still trying to figure each other out, right? So if you're in that situation, when there's a lot of different changes, do not be afraid to like ask for help. Like we utilized a therapist in our community. Like don't think that you have to figure this out on your own. Don't do that. Like ask for help. See what the resources are in your community. With the IVF, I found an IVF community. Like as humans, we're not supposed to do it alone. So really, don't be afraid to reach out, and find your people. Definitely.
Yeah. And you brought up a really good point about young marriages, like marriages that are just starting out, and the stress of a move.
Yes. Yes, it was huge for us. Actually, we were, and I did talk about this in my chapter. We were on the verge of getting a divorce because it was so bad, because like I earlier, we took all of our normalcy and plunked into this huge community. My husband didn't have a job yet. There was all these things, but you just have to remember, you just got to give each other time. You gotta learn, basically relearn some things, but it's totally doable, and it's so worth it. It's so worth it to be able to experience all these new things together with your loved one. I wouldn't change a thing. How because it grew us so much stronger together, even though it was so hard. It like if we wouldn't have went through those struggles, if we wouldn't have done the hard things, I don't think our marriage would be as strong as it is now. I really don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So part of it, I feel like, is learning the communication styles. Because when you plunk yourself into a bunch of stress, which moving can be stressful, and not having support is stressful. And then on top of it, you have a young marriage, and when you don't have those skills yet of how to communicate, how to, like, what are our different views, because we bring in two completely set different views of expectations and standards and all of that. So did you develop any communication techniques during that time?
So we really worked on learning each other's love language, and not assume. The big thing because we were really bad at this at first. And I still find myself sometimes slipping into this, assuming that we know what the other one wants or what the other one needs. Communication, communication, communication. I cannot stress that enough. I know it sounds cliche, but learning to talk to your loved one and learning their love language, learning what they need, not what you think that they need. You know?
Yeah. And it can actually alleviate a lot of the stress, because if we are thinking that they need this, say, thing A, and we're running down that path doing thing A, and they aren't appreciating it, it becomes even more stress. So just asking that question, saying, hey, what do we need? Well, like, where's our standard here? What's our joint standard? And then you can go and you're happy and they're happy.
Yes. Yes. And we are, like, my husband and I are polar opposite on things that we need. Like, I need alone time. I need alone time. And he knows that now. He likes to be in the mix right away, like all the things. So he knows that, hey, Alicia needs some alone time for 5 minutes, and then give me that alone time, and then we can talk about what we need to talk about. So it's until we learned that, it was a struggle. It was a struggle, but we did, and totally worth it.
Right. Yes. Yes. That is awesome. It is definitely worth it. And those skills radiate not just through the marriage, but through the friends that we make in the new area and through our community that we build. So if you're in that hard spot right now and you're listening, just know that the skills that you're learning will not only benefit you there, but they'll benefit you every other place in your life as well.
Yes, and it will continue to build. Like, you just have to start somewhere, and then it'll grow. I promise it'll grow.
Yeah. So if there's somebody listening who is going through a move like you did, like the exact same thing, what's one action step that you would encourage them to do?
I would absolutely, if you were going through what I did, to seek out a therapist. 1000%. Whether it's just the hardness in the marriage, or if you're going through infertility or IVF, I cannot begin to tell you on how much that helped. I honestly don't know if I would have been able to get through it without because I needed somebody to talk to that wasn't directly connected to my husband or my friends or my family. I just needed that outlet. So that really, really helped me. And if you're a person of faith, finding a church, finding a community, leaning on your faith, I think those two things were vital for me. Yeah.
So how did you lean on your church community?
So a lot of prayer. A lot of prayer. And we were blessed with a wonderful pastor, and just another outlet to talk and to help me kind of figure out why I'm feeling what I'm feeling and support me in those feelings. Because it's huge. All those feelings and all those, like I said before, you can't go through it alone. If you do, it's going to be really, really hard, and it doesn't need to be that hard. You need to find people to help you. You just do.
Yeah. And when you said it doesn't need to be that hard, I think that's a really important point, is that when we develop community around us, when we reach out to our support systems, when we admit that, hey, I need some help, then those people can rally around us and they can lift us up.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of times when you're going through loss or huge tragedy or struggle, your people want to be there, but they don't know what to do. And they don't want to step on your toes. That happened to me a lot. And I'm like, why aren't people, at first I was like, why aren't people reaching out? Why aren't they doing this one? Because they didn't know what it was uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable situation. So you, as hard as it is, you have to open up that dialogue and let them in, you know?
Yeah. And people having the best of intentions oftentimes don't know what action step to take if they have never been in that situation before.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's so true. I mean, you hit it right on the head. It's such an uncomfortable situation. And so you have to try your best to let them know what you need, because they're not going to know. Or a lot of times if they try to do it and it's wrong and then you get upset, the only person you have to blame is yourself, because you're not telling them what you need. And that took a lot for me to understand and grow. But in the midst of it, and it's okay to tell them, because for a long time I didn't want anybody. I needed to process on my own. So it's okay. Tell them, hey, you know what? I really right now need alone time. I'm going to turn my phone off. I'm okay. You can check on me tomorrow or whatever. The communication has to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And communication, choosing to communicate well, takes us from being in victim mindset to having control of our situation. Because if we choose to sit back and wait for our friends and our family to reach out to us in the way that we expect them to, all of the control is in their hands.
Yes.
They don't even know it. It's not their responsibility to know what is in our head. So when you make that step and you step over to, okay, this is, first of all, knowing what you want, because some of us don't even know.
Yes.
Like knowing exactly what you want, or like, even if it's not exact, knowing the idea around what you want and then verbalizing that. And that could be with friendship after a move. I see a lot of people waiting on their friends from back home to initiate conversation. So you can use that, like, go ahead, initiate conversation with your friends back home, but also in grief too.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. It's so important. It really is. And a lot of times when you're in the midst of it, it's hard. It's hard. I empathize with anybody that may be going through it right now, because it is hard and it is heavy, but you just have to remember, I get so emotional thinking about, you are not alone. You are not alone. And there are community, especially now with social media, if you don't feel comfortable doing it like in person, there are so many virtual communities out there, with IVF and infertility, or just moving to different places. That's a stepping stone, right? Start there and just know that you're not alone, and you will, but you will get through it. You absolutely can, and you will get through it. So,
yes, those are perfect, encouraging words for the end of our podcast. So, Alicia, where can the listeners reach out to you?
So I am very active over on my Instagram page, and that is actually where I talk a lot about what I talked about in my chapter, just with struggles with infertility and IVF and all of that. So it's Alicia __ Williams. And then I also, I am the owner of Bab's Blessings, which is a online store where you can purchase different bundles for people that need love and encouragement and going through all the hard things. So you can find me on babsblessings.com or on Facebook at Bab's Blessings. But Instagram would definitely be my number one.
Awesome. Well, and for everybody who's listening, I'll have the links below in the podcast notes. So, Alicia, thank you so much for coming on the conversation and sharing your heart with this community.
Thank you for having me.